Hello, here is the beginning of the audio story of the Antika. I work on the audio editing in order to add music and special effects. Please keep me informed of your comments, criticism, observations. Good listening. Name of writers, Dark Apocalypto. Civil name, Reynold Marques Ribeiro. This book entitled, Antika to my son Reyan. Name of author, Reynold Laurent Marques Ribeiro. Name of writers, Dark Apocalypto. Forbidden at least 18 years old. Version uncensored. Here is an extract from the passage of my book Antika. Hoping that you will like it, I wish you happy reading. Give me your opinion when you're done reading. Good entertainment. Reynold Marques. Writer name, Dark Apocalypto. Cazor Futura at Outlook.com by Reynold Laurent Marques. Antika. Engineer technicians John Cooper in charge of engineering communications. Spike at the end of the meeting. Gentlemen, I raise my glass to the tireless research into the electrochemiomolecular component. Antika, Mr. Martarak, let me tell you about the mass distribution of his new high-tech systems. Martarak, seated at the end of the table, threw him a dismal look, swearing revenge for the informative treachery of his inventions for military use. Martarak stood up, his face showing no stress. He headed for the exit. One of the military-dressed guards looked at him coldly. Martarak could not contain his disgust. You bastard, you are a government molehill. A seated man recoiled as a sign that his identity had just been found. Soon this nation will benefit from its Martarak systems. Needless to tell me more bag encased in your greasy rolls. Martarak slammed the door to the Oval Office so hard he shattered the window. Now in the parking lot, Paul Martarak swore to himself with exterminating hateful passion to pulverize his high-security quarters. A few hours later, in the middle of a starless night, in an automated surveillance computer, a call signal was transmitted to Bridget's security guard, whose car had just parked in the shade of a lamppost whose bulb was flashing. Bridget ran up the stairs equipped with a gun. Hearing a distant beep, Bridget rushed to open the door leading to the empty floor. Arrived in front of the screen, a multicolor message was flashing. The entrance landing. Opening written in red flashing letters, emergency signal. Bridget put her hand on the intercom. Safety priority message. Releasing its curved mouth hemmed with the microphone, a creaking door betrayed a presence in its place of vigilance. Bridget, sitting at her desk, opened a metal drawer containing a small weapon. Ducking under the desk, obscuring an attractive sight of murderous curiosity from him, heavy footsteps stopped about 10 yards away. Bridget held her breath, a series of digitally tapped beeps chilling her blood. Pocket remains vigilant, no more than 10 minutes I tell you. A long silence left alone the sound of purified ventilation. A man dressed as a technician seemed to quickly dismantle one of the main transmission modulating cores of the security system. Conduction shit. Another communication took place. Pocket smashes the main circuit breaker located in the forest parks in B2 code. Burns me all these fucking microcircuits. No, now, he ordered, hate in his face. The tech heard a beep coming from Bridget's desktop screen. Taking out a thermo-induction pliers, he strode quickly towards a metal box, tearing off the lid violently. Thousands of files took a closed circuit, turning the information transmitted in a loop into a system located miles away. The images perceived would turn into temporal repetitions in front of a security system of armed soldiers. Technician had made sure of their relaxation, having had a number of cyanide pizzas delivered. Technicians approached Bridget, turning the screen or the message reported a break-in by the engineering director of an artificial intelligence mess. One beep. Okay, I'll take care of it. Making a U-turn, technician approached the modulator glowing with fluorescent verandas. He reached a gloved hand, clearing the centerpiece controlling any communication system. Knowing that the mute alarm would go off, he grabbed the heart of the elaborate system, a heavy ball from which a red laser came out. The fear invading him during his interrogation. The robotic voice signaled code X Magma OFFLET. Technician taking out an LCD touchscreen with infrared connections. Green logistics data scrolled through it. Typing a code of authenticity, the lasers invaded the adjoining buildings, toxic fumes invaded the rooms, the technician now wore an oxygen filtering mask. Having only 10 minutes before being chemically burned. In gas hell, Bridget came out of her hideout. Technician found his hands to carry the heart of artificial intelligence. Do not shoot, you would explode everyone. This gas is a murderous effluvium, lighting a cigarette would be enough to. His words stopped. An explosion of densities shook the place. Bridget felt her skin turn dry. Help me, technician said to him, lower your weapon. His gesture was made quickly. A mask was thrown at him. Keep running. Powerful smoky grayish masked the sight of all exits. Only the heart of the artificial intelligence gave one by its laser. Bursting down the stairs from the basement, the screams of agony from employees burning to liquefy their bodies reached their ears. A man dragged down the stairs, pushed violently by the technician, causing him to lose his balance in a murderous descent, breaking his bones in an audible crack. Technicians, not seeing him, crushed his head with all his weight. Having inspired the toxic smoke, the cranial membrane made a breaking noise. Frightened Bridget ran blindly into a bay window that imploded from the impact of her weight. Scattered pieces of glass left her inert on the tarmac floor. Technician grabbed his weapon, carrying Bridget on his shoulders. He stretched his arm back, emptying the magazine without even looking at the chemical formation in the components that had become flames. Pocket was getting into a jeep when the technician loaded a body in the back into the hell of the explosions as the jeep accelerated. Pocket yelled louder than the engine's pierced exhaust skin. Managed to get us out of the piercing trap. Oh, said the technicians, this artificial intelligence scrambles many signals emitted by radar systems. I don't like it. It will worry the headquarters of the Magma project. I hate your pessimism, yelled technicians, carried away in a hateful lucidity. The weapon pointing in the cranial direction of Pocket. 2 shots of firearm were fired. The jeep, which rocketed quickly, found itself in free wheel. The technicians grabbed him by the shoulders, freeing him over the door. Settling at the wheel, watching in his mirror the body of Pocket bouncing on the ground. Technician crushed the accelerators, taking a forest path, passing an electrified fence system, her body equipped against the cyclic energy of the electric current behind the body of Bridget, who had woken to the sounds of the detonations, was traversed by spasms. The technician repeated to himself, I'm going to kill you all, band of government insurgents. The jeep accelerated, arriving at the edge of a forest immersed in the night. Technicians sank the jeep, watching Bridget disappear into the abyss of the waters, throwing her oxygen mask, holding her weapon. The dismal look, abandoned thick clothing bearing a fingerprint, the name of the creator who developed the project, making an artificial intelligence. Paul Martarak ran for about 15 meters towards a persistent shadow of darkness floating on the waters of a strongly windy river. Thunderclaps. Heavy rain fell on him, starting powerful engines moving away. A month later, EXOTIA, have a good time my sweet Exosha, who gave him a pleasant and delicious wink. On this she jumped out of Cheval Ardent. The super sports vehicle at V12 moved away with a high-pitched rumble, prolonging the passage of steering wheel speeds. Holson, seeing his twin eclipse, inflicted a fight on a group of young, braked dry at his height. Hey, shits have to pay one way. Imagine that he comes down from the ring for you, Peter the Mouth. A young man yelled. His friend fell to the ground with his head bleeding. Next time death will make holes in your skin. The young man picked up his friend, swearing to get revenge one way or another. They continued to walk, limping. A colored man equipped with a Walkman arrived in their direction. Whoops. What is going on? There, I think I'm going to put you on the track of the Agival chest with multicolored wick. The 2 young people followed him, seeing a Latina creature languidly approaching a door. We're going to fuck her for you. I dream of massacring its fucking Americana. I have a hell of an idea. Call with your phone. Infiltrate me, this shitty DJ. The Follett pointed to a window from which came the sounds of house music. Wait, the best will be tonight at Boys Mort. Do you know that this crazy knocker is going to mix with this whore? The air is so good. See you later, say 11:50 p.m. and fix the mouth at La Follette. Hein Follette if he lands on you with your broken nose in the powder. A more guy. The colored man walked away taking the direction of a road leading to the train station in a no-man's land. A drug addict. Ding dong, the doorbell pressed by fine manicured fingers with rainbow-colored traces repeated itself tirelessly. Exosha stood in the opening of the door, hearing that 2 floors above a sound punctuated by numbers of DJ coming from a party island called Ibiza. Damn, he's still gone in his musical flow. Exosha cracked open the door, discovering the foul entrance of spurts of flavor-scented vomit mixed with whiskey. Exosha was careful not to slip from her feet wedged into red high-heeled shoes acquired as a reward at an evening showing off her breasts and bringing down a go-go dancer. Exosha headed for the white marble stairs, began to climb them. A door to her left gave onto a closed fitness room at the start of the morning. Climbing the stairs she came to a living room. Looking to her right she saw a cupboard full of bottles of alcohol. There was a decent-sized brown leather sofa to rest on, a stone coffee table or a huge ashtray was on it containing leftover marijuana joints. One was still smoking. Tall glass panes which she snuck up on approached, given a sight on a court of infantile school establishment on the left, a building of village administrations in the prolongation of the street, a fountain or flowed a water filled with green algae. An ascending staircase given on a mezzanine. Being alone she arrived on a wooden desk. Exosha advanced on the white carpet smelling of mottling. Mix, I tell you. Mache's sunken eyes were full of yellow circles. Trop installed in the comfort of a bed facing the digital CD players emitting bright colors to the rhythm of sound propulsions of 2000 watts at the back of his head. Butterman in a rhythmic flow recorded on computers of sound modulations. He looked at his aquarium or a black-spotted yellow snake swimming in fresh water. Butterman, seeing his Nokia mobile phone turned on, stopped the sound. Picking it up he heard the melodious voice of Exosha telling him that she was on her terrace 5 meters high in front of a black dog trying to eat her. Butterman, leaving Mache, took the truncheon of a CRS, having finished Peter with his fists in the sinister underground corridors of the RATP. Arising in rage at the head, Butterman crossed the living room towards the kitchen. The raging dog became deaf because of the decibels emitted in evening numbers, received 6 baton impacts, saving Exosha. Butterman held out his hand, seeing only his shirt raised by his breasts, what he took for a pleasure to see. He took Exosha's wrist, putting her in her pants while kissing her. Exosha began masturbation, ending in Swallow's juicy mouth. Butterman tells him, let's not waste time, the dog can wake up. Hand in hand they entered the house. Butterman opened the fridge, perforated with a knife by his deceased mother thanks to the gunshot of his father, who had taken the wandering paths of freedom for 2 years already. "Ah, Exosha, you are so good with your mouth," exclaimed Butterman. "Glad to see you, your shapes are so delectable." He kissed her breast, the fingers having grabbed her yellow thong. Exosha says to him, "You want to see my sunny ass?" revealing the fluorescent yellow tattoo to him. "Come to the room I use as my bedroom." They climbed creaking wooden stairs. Upstairs Mache was asleep, too stoned to get up. Exosha looked at a punching bag that Butterman pointed to. "My first steps in the smash of mental beings, forgetting the body thanks to the thought. I'm going to try to beat you fast." Exosha stepped forward, put his foot in the air, throwing him down heavily on the side. The punching bag hit the ground. "Wow, you hid your martial art from me." "I practiced since my childhood. I must introduce you to my brothers." "You have a family? Do I expect to bring you back, or do you spend the evening, night, dawn, morning with me?" "I'll stay. They have a high-class party." Well, Butterman walked into DJ's cabin room. He clicked on a singing electro house sound. Exotia la paradise, you your heartbeat like the rhythm of our steps, the black sun warms all the mirrors. Oh, exotia, get up bird of paradise, you are for my nectar delice of my glide, a French kiss, signed CAIMBO DJ. Exotia paradise is you, your heart beats like the rhythm of our steps, the black sun brightens all the mirrors. Oh, exotia, leave you bird of paradise, youare, for my nectar delice of my slide has a French kiss, signed CAIMBO DJ. I don't know any better music, exclaimed Butterman. Exotia looked at Mache snoring in her sleep. Come, I have to find places for tonight. A friend of mine has already squatted to spend the evening. The door on the ground floor closed. Exotia and Butterman walked hand in hand in an uphill street past a bakery. They heard a violent racial argument. No, these are cakes called nigger heads. A colored man began to threaten them with a look, looking at another cake. He read, a nun. He slammed the door so hard on leaving that the window was cracked. The colored man bumped into Butterman, who asked him, "Where do you creche?" "Chez les Macumbas, not far from the Safari Motel." Butterman gave him a flyers of open-air discotheques. "Join your tribe to ours. Tonight in preview there is a given fire, come and participate." "I would see his guy, my brothers are numerous." Exotia, Butterman continued to climb the street leading into the forest. After a few steps, sounds of flame alerted Exotia. "Don't worry, he's a motorist who's had his head burned, the cops love them." Powerful blackish fumes smelling of rubber made him cough. Crossing it they saw three men with police gate moving away. Taking a path running, they saw at about 20 meters a man dressed in black wearing bloody gloves. Exotia and Butterman hid behind high bushes. The man looked right and left in one of his hands at a black object which detonated in the trunk of the car. A body traveled with spasms, including blood spurting from the carotid artery. The man got behind the wheel. The black car passed not far from Exotia, who read the license plate, leaving him with the name Kazor in mind. The car turned into a forest exit. Hearing violent accelerations, Exotia, Butterman began to run through numbers of brambles, ransacking the arms of Exotia. 300 meters and Butterman collapsed. A side fist invaded the body, made him gasp with each inspiration. "Let's not stay here, the road is close to a high-voltage electric rammer." Exotia saw it about 600 yards away. "The woods are not funny here," noticed Exotia, looking at Butterman with his back bent on his knees. "Wait. I'll wait for my breathing to come back." "Shit," pronounced Butterman, hearing people yelling and the sound of motorcycle engine coming. The bikers raced along a twisted dirt road filled with holes and stones, the first of them coming out of the undergrowth in Huling. Exotia had crouched down. 5 other bikers without helmets arrived. "Haw!" exclaimed one of them. "There was thunder not far away." "Yes," answered Butterman, "a sound lightning to hit the wood." Here one of them took a thermos, handing it to Butterman. "Hey, thank you. Your thirst is air." Real reluctance to contemplate. "Boy, of which this competition whiskey, I also have acids." Exotia watched him take out a sachet containing spot chemicals. "Is terrible, my beauty." "Okay, thank you for the chemical experience," grabbing a sachet he had just filled. "Come on DJ, see you later." "Hey guys, help me out." Exotia got on the back of a motorcycle. Never ceasing to accelerate, Butterman had difficulty getting up despite his dried-up thirst. He still felt the painful bullet taken 2 years earlier at the place of faith. Their conveyances took place to a very little-known entrance overlooking an extensive lake. The motorcycles traveled 100 meters before the engines stopped in front of Spookle Toxico and guarantor of the evening. "Hi Spookle, I see you are equipped." "Yeah, I brought my turntables, DSP, equalizer, modulator, and the sound is coming in about an hour." Well, the bikers were drinking. One of them started to get excited nervously. We move, I lose patience. The tense nerves, it accelerated brutally. The others followed it in a sunset on the shaded lake of varied trees. In the sound of birds perching in the treetops, the sound of engines faded into the distance. Exosha took the chemical bag containing numbers of pills. Rummaging through it, she found a word. I'm coming back, Butterman. She walked away reading, tomorrow late afternoon, signed, Eclipse. Well, she said to herself, at least he remains preoccupied. A warm breeze blew pleasantly. Exosha undressed, going swimming in the lake. The water brought her a freshness of well-being. Numbers of quads crossed the woods. The house music sound started. The first arrivals were served drinks. Everyone had brought food. Lighting a fire, thick smoke rose at the start of the night. The various electronic rhythms propelled by 5,000-watt speakers made Butterman settle on the platinum, which chained a mix as the minutes passed. A full moon highlighted the numbers of arrivals. 2 men were each with their hands on leashes holding watchdogs. About 50 meters away they were checking the tranquility. Provided with a walkie-talkie, one of them received information that for the moment nothing had awakened the party gossips, the policemen. A man with a wooden cane walked to the rhythm of the sound. 20 meters behind him, the Macumbas that Butterman had crossed in the afternoon were carrying African tam-tams. Spookle gave him a smile, saying, mix including jungle, Goa trance. An hour later the evening started at the bar, and smoke at the sight of a man condensed into rhythms of nearly 300 people. At the edge of the wood, La Fouine de Follette, accompanied by 15 of these men, took a precise look at each female body. Hey now, the Follette got up from its observation point and headed towards the end of the lake, skirting it and watching for a target. A car arrived from the distant music of American Grease. The Follette hid with its companions. Many lights from laser spots are located 200 meters away. The Follette, hatred in head, motivation with each of its steps, remained a moment stashed, sternly observed an exotic creature. Seeing her squatting in the process of freeing herself from toxic urine, he jumped on her, pulling her by the hair and hitting her on the head with an American fist. Exosha tried to scream, the face of filth presenting itself to her in a broken nose. The sound of the evening covered her cries. Another man arrived, taller than the Follette, already measuring in 1.90 meters. You're going to bite my filth. The man held her arm. The Follette injected her with a chemical product that plunged Exosha into a heavy sleep. With the help of 5 other people they carried her to an abandoned place. The Follette experienced a feeling mixed with delectable sadism in her brain. Exosha opened a heavy eye, her vision blurred. She felt the poison in her body devour her reason with each question from the Follette, who told her get up and dance in a vengeful tone. Exosha could not counter. The words no longer came out of her mouth, just a thick drool exciting the Follette in her organ. He opened his fly, telling her suck bitch, his angry tone rising in decibels. Exosha staggered, feeling the body heat worsening her state of lucidity. In the depths of her being, an energy channeled by her logic made her run hideously sideways just until her legs were sucked into the icy waters of the blackish lake. La Follette, whose body was deformed from a dystrophic disease, saw one of his companions jump into the water in order to rescue Exosha, who did not have the strength to swim in its swampy waters. Grabbing him by the waist in the muddy waters, he saw La Follette aiming at him with a pellet gun. Damn, you want to find yourself at the bottom with her. An annoying noise made the head turn to the Follette. At a distance of 30 meters a powerful gleam crossed the trunks of the many trees. The excited little girl, her face filled with cruelty, giving her nervous spasms, yelled Butterman before collapsing on the ground, his head pierced by the arrow of a crossbow. Exosha was pulled out of the water. Short of breath, she received anti-venom in her sun buttocks. Malwek spoke to her, saying, "Here is the beginning of the germ of madness devouring the Follette day after day." Rummaging in his sports bag he found syringes where medical drugs were written. not compounds of the common kind in a world of toxicology like the anti-venom Malwek had injected her with her eyes wide open to gaze at the starless sky. He had to wait for the effects to destroy the violence of the reason that the cracked skull that was dragging an arrow in the head on the ground had injected into him. 3 shadows advanced in the night towards him, all armed with firearms, the university uniforms, distinguishable by their coats of arms, positioned themselves around R of Malwek, who heard. "Hey guys, don't kill my bros." Indiano with decades-long hair arrived equipped. He looked at Exosha breathing back to normal. "Indiano." Malwek took the body of the fillet they threw into the water, watching his body sink into it. "Worry brothers, we found someone not far from the second pond. A 16-year-old girl ready to stab her arm with a barber's razor." "I can't follow you." At his words, Exosha put one hand on the ground, helped by an academic, to get up. Everyone went in the direction of Sandy with warm breasts next to Debbie, drying her tears after having counted her life without destiny. The words remained engraved in Sandy. "I no longer knew if I lived." The incandescent red eyes watching me at the entrance to the wood. "Shit," thinks Sandy, drinking himself, is a trap for souls. The group of guys arrived, reassuring them by armed presence. A sound began to reach them with a demented illogical. All had the rolled-up flesh. Debbie was pulled by the hand with force. Exosha, supported by 3 guys, hands on their weapons, advanced in the total dicaphonia of a man singing through the forest, resembling a castra. Only a mulatto man seemed to approve of him on those last notes, derailing the weight of his body that his slow mind weighed down. He collapsed dead after beating him. He remembered, "I put a tap a pat." Exosha walked supported by Indiano in Butterman's footsteps. The Eclipse and Holsen twins' Ardent Horse parked in the VIP area. A valet advanced in front of his job to keep the keys to the racing car. "Gentlemen, please." He held out a white leather-gloved hand. Eclipse glanced at her fellow, who looked hard at the valet. "I'm passing through. I don't really want to leave a racing car like me behind." The 4 exhausts emitted clicks due to the burst of speed in the red zone having transported them. Hearing these words, a guard dressed in high standing approached, saying, "The rules of our prestigious establishment will not disappoint you. Leave your keys and please follow me." Eclipse tossed the fiery horse keys into the valet's hands. His twin remained for a moment in a static pose, scrutinizing where the valet took his car. Eclipse heard the laughter of elegant strawberry blonde women. "Do you want to meet them?" The guard walked in their direction. Peered at the light silk evening dresses. Eclipse added, "Well, that sounds interesting to me." Walking towards the light dresses fluttering in a breeze in this Indian summer. The security guard approached one of them, whispering elegant words to her in all discretion. The Venetian blonde turned, her light blue eyes filled with sensuality, scrutinized Eclipse in all delicacies. She spoke Slovak to her companion, following in Eclipse's languorous footsteps. "Hello, my name is Drika." She was holding a glass of champagne, taking a long sip. "Well, my name is Eclipse." Enchanting. Drika held out her slender hand extended by hooked white nails. Eclipse took her hand, looking away. Sitting on white marble benches in the forest park, a group of young people seeming to be intoxicated by a strong smell of marijuana. "I don't see any other place where we can settle down," pronounced the Venetian blonde Drika. "The suitable place close to a bar. Let the youngsters begin to whistle." The Venetian blonde. "Hey my slut, come here, I'll fuel your ass." The words stopped in abeyance. "Thank you," said Eclipse with her hand on a master key, pulling it out of her fly in a chrome caliber. "Why, we tear off the friends." They stood up, passing by Eclipse. The latter told them, "It's nice for my onion puller," showing his gunship in the fly. "The gray barrel gives strong stomach aches." "You know how to do it," remarked the Venetian blonde Drika. "Your stature scared him away." Eclipse, weighing 120 kilos, built on Californian beaches to eat hot dogs filled with mustard. Arriving at a bar, Champagne ordered the blonde, asking, Do you like avalanche-type powder? As she pulled a sachet of powder from her silicone-inflated chest. Eclipse went to the bartender asking him, "How much for an evening from your fridge?" Well, he opened the door, falling on champagnes of high financial values. "I estimate the price at €1,000 per bottle, dear sir." Eclipse handed him a heavy wad of purple bills. "Fuck you, don't leave me here with my iceberg doll." From Slovakia, she specified. The man pocketed the wads of money, put a lock at the entrance to the forest parks, turning off a lamp signaling the closing of the bar. Eclipse watched him stop in front of two medium-sized men. One of them pushed him to the ground, a gun pointed at him. The bartender threw up his hands. A police badge and a walkie-talkie were quickly found in his pockets. The Latin rap music resounded with bass, covering two detonations given to the weasel of a cop. The walkie-talkie broadcast in their mortifying presence concerning the bartender suspected of defrauding organized crime. On the upper floors of the prestigious Bonsoir Monsieur residence, "Would you like a glass of champagne?" Holson knocked over all the glasses, shattering on the marble floor. Pushing the waiter down violently, Holson began to drink from the bottle, unzipping his jacket, revealing a black Uzi. A teenager passed nearby, seeming to seek a paternal presence. Holson tracked him as he saw the teenager climbing the stairs. Richwood, the big boss of the high bank, a cigar in his mouth, conversed on the telephone, smelling not the smell of tobacco but that of melting plastic. Glancing at the window, scrutinizing the trees of the forest, his gaze lowered towards the parking lot, or numbers of men screamed while seeing the body of the valet running in the flames of his own doom incantation. In horrific cries of quemation, the boss heard a rotting voice, "Hey pig face, you're turning." The menacing tone, the unusual voice, caused dizziness in Boss Richwood's head. From big beads of sweat dripping down his forehead, his heart accelerated rapidly in such a way as to infuriate him. The piggy face reddened with anger, emitted devastating hatred from his eyes. In a quick gesture, the hand grabbed a concealed weapon, turning quickly in a gesture enforceable. Its detonation made him scream, seeing his son fall from the bullet he had just fired, having hit him mortally. Holson actually taking this for his own mental, moral attack, threw a fragmentation object at him, through the bullets scattering around him. The rims swollen with grease eaten in Norman sauce chicken saw the presence. Holson, having hidden behind his son, left the room at a run, descending the steps 4x4. The explosion tossed Boss Richwood through the bay window, his heavy greasy body falling from floor to floor, making the sound of car wrecking, landing on his own expensive Mercedes 4x4. Sitting on a white marble bench, Eclipse peered into the bay window, smashed into the property from which flames were coming out. Dricka continued to drink in torrents. "Oh there," Eclipse says to herself, seeming to be stunned by that champagne descent of the blonde. "You annoy me," slapping her a slap, grabbing an unopened Grand Perignon bottle, her passé part out with the cold metallic barrel stuck to the blonde's skin. Eclipse clarified, "At a distance of 100 meters my machine provides relief in your silence." He took out a card, handing her. She read, "A target from bullet." Eclipse violently pulled her by the right arm, causing her to fall to the ground. "You are special in your kind. The pavilion of the rich customers is supervised in safety," specified Dricka. Eclipse says, "I am an investor in the port area. My actions are an interesting pole of attraction. If you want to take advantage of a walk in the ocean, you will not be disappointed. Come with me, the evening has just begun." Glancing at a clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, Eclipse, Dricka passed not far from the CEO Richwood, the dislocated body trapped in a Mercedes 4x4 pushed by numbers of men. "In that case let's walk a little, Dricka." Eclipse entered the dark forest. The tipsy blonde walked in, crosshairs everywhere, the cold cannon. She was holding a magnum of champagne in her hands. "Let's stop here." The blonde took a powder, rising her hormones. These breasts were fondled. Eclipse held the weapon in the direction of his head. Dricka sucked him. A whitish liquid evacuated in his mouth, flowing over her breasts. Eclipse remained sober-head heard Dricker's phone vibrate. He lifted the silk dress, revealing a black octopus tattooed with Indian ink. Eclipse, in a cold, murderous gaze, was about to mortify her. The tattoo stopped her execution. In his gesture, holding the firing pin of his weapon goes everywhere. Eclipse whispered, "Dricker, I didn't know the Trujillos were involved in this. Don't worry, we control the exits of this residence." Sounds, those of bullets propelled by Uzi machine guns, reached their ears. A fire alarm sounded suddenly, coming from the pavilions represented by prestigious flags. Holson had just nodded at the valet, not recognizing his Filipino style. The man on the ground threw many bunches of car keys on the ground. "Damn!" Holson picked up Fiery Horse. A telephone beep informed Eclipse of the bank robbery of Bullet, the thinking head friend of Long killing in the previous years. Holson pressed the accelerator up the needle as the tachometer of the flames came out of the four exhausts, hit by the pressure of the kill, and the helicopter-borne arrival of the Eclipse police made Dricker run, pulling her forcefully with one arm. Hearing the sound of the engine V12, Eclipse caught the blonde, stoned with cocaine, began to run, hearing gunfire in the residence of the high-standing evening. Flames from exhausts propelled Fiery Horse well away from the killings. Half an hour passed, receiving a call from Bullet. He heard success winner Holson driving full speed yelled at Eclipse, who kissed Dricker, "Go get EXOTIA." Fiery Horse took the road leading to Bullet's daughter. At the crossroads of two roads, Ardent Horse will deaccelerate. The roaring engine. Dricker climbed into a chauffeured vehicle, taking him away with a man staring at the covered in tattoos. At dawn the next day, loud house music came from the remote forest of the village. Eclipse was in perfect admiration of her golden hair, paying the bill. "Oh, thank you again to you, kind hairdresser, you seem to me to be a princess," replied a bald man holding a scissor. Eclipse sported his multicolor wedding ring, his long hair shaken to the rhythm of the fans in this Indian summer that he had the pleasure of discovering taking his sunshine glasses. The gaze scrutinized with dazzling pink colors. His loose Hawaiian shirt concealed a pass everywhere in a cold cannon. The noise of a powerful V12 caught his attention on a descent, the racing car accelerating a young female figure whose measurements entered the cabriolet at a rearing horse. "Ah, my brother is finally here," exclaimed Eclipse, staring at a tobacconist where young people were tricked out to buy rolling papers whose exotic flavors escaped in great smoky wisps. Exosha stood in the back, a black Chicago Bulls cap on her head. Butterman, wedged in his back seats, felt cramped, his gaze filled with greedy desire. He put a hand around his Latina's neck. "Exosha, fuck, let me fuel you." He opened his fly. "Sorry, Ardent Horse dude wants to get out of here." Gula Holson, maneuvering a tight turn. Butterman caressed her legs, and acceleration propelled the vehicle, turning to a fountain of lyre in amorous kiss. Tearful Exosha began to evacuate the great waters passing through her sun-colored eyes. The music of the V12 took a mouthpiece, coming under a bridge where alcoholic police bikers reviled, red whistles hanging over their heads. One of them positioned himself in the middle of the road, seeing in V12 a collection of almonds. Holson from Florida waved at his twin. Eclipse got up, his master key detonated as much as the flashbacks caused by Fiery Horse. A straight line made it reach 120 kilometers per hour in 3 seconds and 2/100ths. "So Exosha, you're not very talkative," Holson exclaimed. "Go on your way, Ardent Horse." Exosha's friend was getting his cock sucked mightily, pulling off his Chicago Bulls cap to pick up the hair. His face had a wan rise. Eclipse patted Holson on the shoulder, who turned to look at it twice. Ardent Horse took a dirt road, stopping with squealing slick rubber tires. Exosha had passed out with her lips full of sperm. Holson jumped out of the convertible and caught it, peering at its head, where a large scar still fresh showed stitches. "You're kidding, Butterman," There you beat up Eclipse came out all over the place, blocked on the back of his back, shot twice in the air. Butterman, I'm going to beat you on the Eclipse ignition side. The visor of his weapon goes everywhere. I don't know where she's been coming from since last night. I've been waiting for her. I thought she was with the others. Other is who? Bullet searchers. I leave you 5 minutes to reason with you. That night she was with a group of university students not far from the forest. I found him walking home staggering, thinking about his evening of collective watering. Exosha doesn't belong to anyone, that's its watering. Fists in the mouth, retorted Holson, pinching Exosha's nose, giving her mouth to mouth. Eclipse dialed a phone number that beeped 50 minutes away. Why hello, pass me Exosha, it's been vacation days, she must be out of cash. I'll give you a summary later, the fresh food is in big bags, come back. Listen, we're coming, warn the Moto boys. Okay. The phone hung up. A cough spat out a semantial liquid. Exosha opened one eye, the engine started. Holson put her in the car saying, let's talk. So you walk your honey ass and you get yourself a self-doctor. My ass took spikes too. To see your face, it's the haute couture department. Ardent Horse tumbled onto the main road and took a tail. 3 bikers without helmets passed Uzis and hand. One of the passengers waved to them. Ardent Horse followed him into an industrial zone, parked with a squeal of tires in front of a building. On his floors, Bullet with swollen nerves had to keep patience in front of Mawax, his mouth deformed by the pain of the crack brake having left him with a nasty leg wound. His eyes scrutinized the vast room. Playing with his red laser sight moved him, exciting the nerves of Bullet's daughter's cat running after each stop. Mawax was repeating himself, still dead. Making a trigger noise with his mouth. The door downstairs swung open. Bullet hid in a corner, a submachine gun in his hands. To hear it sounded like rushing footsteps. A moto boy came in yelling, your kid Bullet is badly messed up, followed by 2 twins carrying her. Mawax half got up despite the pain. He recognized Holson. A bed was next to Mawax, welcoming the exhausted body of Exosha. Bullet arrived quickly, his gaze hardened through his sunglasses. Holson, contemplating 5 bags full of banknotes, looked at Mawax, who waved to him, indicating that there are still some. Holson told him, naughty impact received. Shut up, shouted Bullet, he's deaf. All to explode. Damn Exosha. Bullet, nervous to see nasty wound, approached it. The door opened behind their backs. Butterman stood in the crack of the door, aimed at the head by a red ray, propelling the cat with its claws open on its face. Down, yelled Bullet, motherfucker face. Bullet slapped his face sharply. The impact echoed through the room as Butterman's heavy punching body slumped to the ground. Put him aside, understood Moto boy, he's going to have a good time. His fingers cracked. Dragging him like a dead dog, he took him to a small room. Closing a heavy iron door, the Moto boy struck 2 blows with the butts of his revolver. Butterman, getting up, fell to the ground under the power of the impacts, blood escaping from his head. Exosha looked at Bullet, inspected on the head. His scar was repulsive. Put in a raging anger, he pronounced in a tone of great hatred, a hand pointing to a door. Go spill her brains out. Exosha felt dizzy seeing Eclipse pull out her master key. Her brother Holson was putting away the bags full of green dollar bills. Exosha, seeing Eclipse, made the first steps, began to scream. No, don't kill him, there's nothing to do with it. Listen, Exosha, orders are ordered. She got up imbued with dizziness and stood in front of Eclipse to prevent him from progressing on his mortuary path towards Butterman. Behind the door, Moto boy found himself crushed by the weight of Butterman having violently hit him in the knees. An uppercut laid Moto boy. Butterman's eyes, injected with the blood of hatred, stared at the switch. Taking 2 steps, he turned off the light of the room, remaining concealed, the weapon in the direction of the door. Bullet, we have to go, says Holson, finishing to program a countdown. The latter lifted Mawax, wounded in one leg by a caliber bullet that hit him at the end of the bank robbery. Eclipse turned looking at Bullet, not seeing Exosha in her back opening the door. "Hey Bullet," her words stopped, hearing in her back a creaking of the door ajar. 6 gunshots impacted an exotic body, crumbling to the floor in emotional hardness. Mwax strafed the wall in the room. Butterman received a burst of bullet in the wounded belly. He bent on his knees in fear. The light came on, seeing that he had fired. "Exosha!" Butterman screamed. Noon. Eclipse ran up to her, grabbing her inert body. He pulled her out of the half-open door, giving her mouth-to-mouth. A strident sound alarm outside was activated. Bullet ran to take a heavy red briefcase. A resuscitation material was laid out there. Arriving with great strides on Eclipse, he said to him, "Get away." Eclipse withdrew his hands from the body, taking 5 blows, causing Exosha's body to tremble under the impact of the Electro's resuscitator. His respiratory system resumed feverishly. Halsin kicked the door hard, seeing Butterman put a gun to his head. "No!" shouted Butterman, "I'd rather die." He pressed the trigger 6 times to clear his cerebral box part. Halsin took a revolver stuck in his back containing bullets. 2 shots took Butterman's breath away as the explosion from both of his knees splattered hot blood across Halsin's face. Coldly looking at Butterman writhing in pain, Mwax, having stood up despite his injury to his femur, yelled, "I'll cut him off immediately," while reloading his weapon. Bullet, aided by Eclipse, transported Exosha's body to a Brinks van, which they used to transport the money, and emptied the bank. Lying on her back, Exosha's sensual face shook as the engine started. Halsin was driving, taking a road towards the hospital. As he turned onto Bullet Boulevard, heard a beep from a phone reading there. "I'm in the ocean, ready to receive you." Coordinates appeared from longitudinal degrees direction offshore. Mwax. Eclipse ascended the lifeless body of Butterman on a fiery horse, taking a road leading to the port area. In the city, the group of motorcycle boys received the imminent emergency. Pouliot and his brothers, equipped with firearms, accelerated to a field hospital defaced with graffiti. The car of a surgeon doctor driving was tailed. "Yes, my dear wife, my day went well," on the phone from her luxurious car. His wife heard her surgeon husband scream. Pouliot, a flaming bottle, threw her about 10 meters from the car, breaking dry in a cry of horror. The surgeon was shot at. The rear window imploded. Hearing "Get off your iron crate, mulattoes," the surgeon was grabbed by 2 motorcycle boys, pressing a gun to his head. On riding on a motorcycle, speeding away fleetingly, the surgeon heard his car by Cash explode on the boulevard. Lampas in an alley. Halsin, equipped with his electrician equipment, found the place of the main circuit breakers of the district, equipped with a drill, unscrewing the base, arriving on many fuses, fixing their thick pliers, reversing the positive and negative poles of violent explosions of neon bulbs in the streetlights took place. A distant siren of firefighters in a state of emergency stopped on the boulevard, ending the flames of blackish odors escaping from a vehicle. Bullet, equipped with a GSM, made an encrypted call. Why, it's understood. At the other end of the telephone, Paul Martarak hung up kilometers away. A powerful blackish yacht changed its sea course. Halsin made a phone call to a detonator. The building where Exosha had been shot exploded. In the armored van, Exosha was breathing with a pulsed air mask, blowing air into her lungs. A cardiogram demonstrated the dramatic state of his heart with intermittent beats. Bullet heard a shrill beep, sign that his heart was no longer working. At the same time, a sound of honking made Eclipse open the door, who threw himself on the surgeons, holding an arm behind his back, a revolver on his head. "Climb inside," yelled Eclipse. The rear doors open. The spectacle seen by the surgeons pointed at the head by Halsin, telling him, "Hurry up." Bullet got out of the van. His nerves couldn't take the pressure of his daughter's death anymore. The surgeon, equipped with a black briefcase, gave him an intravenous adrenaline in order to increase Exosha's heart rate. The street plunged in the freezing blackness of death, allowed Bullet to make a call to the motorcycle boys. "No, Exosha is not well at all. I have to leave. We take the direction of the port. Take the lead." Cops, I don't care, shoot everyone in store you not far from the security plant. We have few resources, patrol security vehicles. The surgeon got out of the armored van. 15 long minutes had passed. Numbers of motorcycle boys had passed in the alley to take instructions. Bullet, the stern face whose eyes mirrored the surgeon, heard the machines hold her. The best would be the hospital. Given your situation, I understand that you cannot go there. For your good and his, remain neutral and master of yourself. You stay with us. Bullet authoritatively motioned for Holson to start the armored car. Motorcycles boys, during the surgical manipulation carried out on the body of Exosia, the surgeon had declared to Bullet that he wanted to remain alone. Not a bacterium should enter the operation carried out with meticulousness. Bullet stood next to one of the twins. The latter removed the gloves that allowed him to trip the residential area. On the approach, numbers of motorcycles entered Thea Street, headlights extinguished, driving slowly. Only one youngster had the exhaust pipes pierced. Bullet stood in the middle of the road facing 30 moto boys, most of them not wearing helmets. The motorcycles deviated from their trajectories to let a black Japanese quad bike pass. Carlito's Cuban accent said, "I know what's going on," pointing to the bullet-riddled Brinks van. Bullet, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, greeted Carlito, talking to him. "Where is Calandro? A regular of the genre, rather tattooed from head to toe." "You don't know. A fortnight ago Calandro disappeared, leaving me alone with this gang." Turning my head, seeing that all were waiting, some reloaded and checked their firearms. Bullet spoke in a dry, authoritative tone laced with nervousness. "We must get me and my companions to the tourist port area as quickly as possible." Bullet pointed to Holson. "These scoundrels own a yellow-colored offshore boat parked on the quay opposite one of the most luxurious hotel restaurants on the street alongside the yachts. Your area is strongly controlled. There are 2 security barriers, the first to enter the perimeter of the stores. This one is filled with armed police, without forgetting the second, which is the tourist security of the quay." "You seem to me to be in order," said Carlito, Calandro's brother. "After all, if you have an offshore parked along the quay, this offshore is in fraud. We scuttled it in the Pacific Islands." A beep sounded. Bullet put his hand on his phone, hearing, "I am at 120 degrees longitude and will travel many miles." "How?" questioned Paul Martarak on the other side of the mobile. "I'm sending you my coordinates on offshore sailors." "Thank you." Bullet clapped his hands hard, twirling one finger in the air. Carlito signaled to the motorcycle boys to clear off in the direction of the tourist port area. Taxi boys, the quad followed by its rebel horde, sped up fast enough to reach the port, located 20 minutes away. On the road the lights turned red, stopping the cars in a parking lot. The quadricycle turned right onto the monorails of an oncoming high-speed streetcar, beeping horns. Carlito pulled his throttle fully. The wheels of the quadricycles slipped, rising. On the sides, numbers of cars at a standstill. The boys' motorcycles pushed hard on the accelerator. Carlito, whose quad skidded, the boys' motorcycles scattered, maneuvering in the traffic jam. Carlito turned right, hearing the sound of the tram passing behind him. Carlito smashed a security barrier, finding himself in a parking lot, triggering an alarm whose yellow flashing lights illuminated numbers of vehicles. In a security post eating hamburgers, a security guard stood up, opening the door from which came Wolf, a German shepherd, barking furiously. City, a taxi driver smoking a cigarette, got out of his vehicle. One of his hands was torn in the power of the jaws of Wolf. The taxi drivers fell to the ground. In a long extension of the yellowish flashing lights, the security guard was running breathlessly with a shotgun in his hands. His body received 3 bullet holes calibrated by Carlito. Behind him, the blackness of the lampposts showed hideous, hateful faces rolling on motorbikes, checking the area, shooting at every person interviewed in the cars. One of them turned off the howling security siren. 10 minutes passed in a breaking Neiman silence. the sounds of engines trying to start. In dead silence, the taxis took the direction of the port area. Bullet checked Exosha's heart stability. Laying a hand on the surgeon, he snapped his fingers. Brother Holson moved forward at a brisk pace. The surgeon looked worried, his forehead full of sweat. He said, "I extracted 4 bullets from the body." "Well, things are going better," said Holson, not at all confirmed the surgeon. "There are 2 bullets left not far from the carotid artery. Unfortunately, I can't do anything with the little equipment I have." "Listen," said Bullet, "we're going to the port area. I'm sorry for you now. You're Exosha's lifeguard and my entrance to the safe areas." A long beep made Bullet pick up the phone, and he said, "Get in quick." 2 long minutes passed alone. The noise of the electrocardiogram gnawed at Bullet's head. Flashes of headlights took place. 5 prestigious luxury VIP cars driven by motorcycle boys entered the darkness of the street. Holson took down the heavy bags by 2 filled with dollar bills, filling the trunk of the VIP cars. Eclipse, his caliber in hand, was already alongside a taxi boys, his hands on the leather steering wheel. The rear shock absorbers lowered due to the weight of bags and weapons. The Brinks van emptied. Bullet watched as Exosha was held in the line of artificial life. Bullet, in crisis, pointed his weapon in the direction of the surgeon. "Resuscitate the place where your head breaks," the surgeon specified. "I can bring an ambulance car. Now the fate of his men is up to you." An emergency call was made to the Beausejour hospital. The surgeon explained, "Person wounded by bullets in the chest and legs, sent an emergency ambulance to Rue des Grenadiers." 5 minutes from her driving down the boulevard, a medical vehicle took a call on the microphone. "Request emergency, Street of the Grenadiers, people wounded by bullets in a commercial state." On the boulevard, a vehicle caught in the traffic jam turned on the flashing lights, a screaming siren rolling on the lane reserved for the bus. In a skid, the ambulance arrived in the Rue des Grenadiers, or a parked VIP taxi car blocking. The surgeon asked Bullet's men to transport Exosha's body to the back of the ambulance. During their walks, the surgeon at Bullet's side stood up to the paramedic, lowering his window, and said, "We're taking him away immediately." The surgeon tells him, "Shut up." The passenger door opened. Bullet entered, pointing his revolver at the paramedic's head. Looking at the radio on, he heard messages of information of injured people and serious accidents. "Light your iron crate and head to the expressway at the tourist port." The paramedic started the car. The surgeon had taken place next to Exosha, connecting her to various devices in order to learn more about the biorhythm of her blood, heart, brain. The sirens howled again, leaving the VIP taxi vehicle with Holson at the wheel. Eclipse followed them, the engine of the V12 rolling slowly. In the vehicle, the paramedic pronounced the port area is 20 minutes away. Bullet turned up the sound of the hearing ambulance receiver. "State of emergency, attack in the port area on the security poles." The paramedic's face blanched. Bullet stuffed dollar bills into his shirt pocket. Approaching the port, a screaming crowd fled the place. The ambulance driver entered a street overlooking a visual slaughter of dead policemen in uniform, bodies riddled with bullets. The security barrier was broken. Machine gun fire echoed in the alley. A powerful grayish smoke masked the view. Bullet heard the explosion of smoke bombs, those fired by MAWACS. Breaking through the howls of tourists, the hot fumes from the engines clanging loudly made Bullet say, "Stop here. We have arrived." MAWACS at the back of the boat continued to fire, the smoke spreading from the heights. A strong acceleration startled the paramedic, that of the V12. Eclipse descending threw him the keys of Ardent Horse. "She is yours." Holson arrived, seizing Butterman by the hair, dragging him. The latter screamed in pain, his knees broken. Holson slapped him violently in the face, collapsing him offshore. Exosha was transported by Eclipse in a comfort bed for the seriously injured on board the offshore. On board, MAWACS was already lying, one eye in a telescope, scanning the apartments. Eclipse on the platform heard the sounds of heels crossing. The feminine form of Drika appeared to her. A strong sea wind cleared the thick fog obscuring the sight of Bullet. Calandro in the fog suddenly appeared. Noticed at these tattoos from head to toe. Hola amigo. Bullet caught up with a bag containing many dollars, handing it to the boss of the Trujillos. The roaring engines drove the offshore away on coordinates received by GSM, leaving the port area in a chaotic state of greyish smoke and lifeless bodies. End of the introductory phase of the blog written by, from Dark Apocalypto Country, Brazil. Next blog. The power of the engines stabilized the offshore boat in a straight line. Bullet grabbed his mobile phone, making an encrypted call. In the middle of sizzle caused by a spy microphone sounder, a voice said, "Yes, what is it?" "Listen, we are in the middle of the ocean with Exosha injured in a comatose state. Think that I have something to reward you financially if you tell me where I can stay." A shrill beep sounded in the Bluetooth headsets. Miles away, Paul Martarak walked to his vehicle containing a small notebook. "On your tracing you have the Black Island." Bullet heard a long series of electronic taps ending on the reception of the data of a route in his offshore. "Thank you, friend." Hearing the engine of the vehicle driven by Paul Martarak, Bullet hung up. Crossing the ocean abysses, the body filled with convulsion of joy to contemplate fumarate toxic blackness in the distant. Paul Marterak engulfed him board in a cavernous entrance, surrounded by thick rocks formerly molten lava. A shadow stood overhead, a machine gunner on a tripod, one eye in an infrared telescope with an automated sight indicating the distance to the target in a point of greenish luminosity on Paul's back, pushing out a mighty acceleration as he shut down the engines in icy silence. A magma outfit had laser movements that gave it a representation of high-speed moving targets located miles in its path. Only the electronic sound emitted by the artificial intelligence magma outfit betrayed the presence of Paul. His eyes riveted on the heart of a laborious technological elaboration, he removed the protective glove from his left hand, paying no attention to the 6 fleeting shadows wearing masks or oxygen, dressed in black, approached him in order to give him violent caliber blows in the head. His face illuminated by the powerful laser beams emitted by the artificial intelligence. Paul tapped a series of programs. When validating his programming, powerful breaths of fire passed him not far from the head, impacting 5 bodies falling from the rocks, crashing into the waters oceanic. Paul, weapon in his right hand, drew. The noise echoed, 6 bullets having pulverized a heap of flesh. Wearing a strange mask illuminated from the inside, having aimed at his chest protected by a thick anti-bullet vest, the man fell under the power of the impacts while holding a weapon emitting a sound of electronic pulse in the direction of Paul. The weapon with vacuum. The man made a gesture, pressing a yellow light propelled numbers of lasers in him board. Paul felt a sharp burn on his right cheek. Bending down, lying on magma outfit, Paul only heard the sound of metal cutting. His hands on his revolver, he groped for a box of ammunition. A loud sound of breach resounded in the heights. The laser gunner made a long zoom in the night, seeing a blackish imprint, that of the exit of a silent gun. Pressing the trigger, the yellow lasers ricocheted on numbers of rocks, illuminating a sniper. A click signaled the end of his cerebral charge in a single gold-colored bullet fusing at 800 meters seconds, spreading his skull on many meters behind. A sweating Paul whistled through his fingers 3 times his rescue. Having reloaded his weapon, the sounds of gunfire echoed. His thumb signaled, "Everyone is dead." A thick layer of blood escaped from the pieces of the skull of the 6 individuals in the saline waters. Descending from the board, Paul rolled up his sleeve, connecting magma outfit to a series of electronic fiber components, climbing the steep rocks one by one, hearing a loud beep alerting him to the presence of enemies within his perimeters. Activating the organization of its rescuers and associated with the heavy submachine gun disassembled in kit in an oceanic orientation. The disassembled perforated hot barrel gave way to a nuclear fragmentation missile launcher. Paul connected magma outlet to the radar missile launcher in impact mode, connected to his implanted microcircuits by controlling the trajectory of the detonating missile in a bright light highlighting numbers of military boats miles away. The ocean waters shuddered under the nuclear power of the resonant impact, shaking the seabed in a rising explosion in the air, illuminating a long perimeter. "Let's not stay," yelled Paul. "A tidal wave will break and destroy the mark." Pirito with the submachine gun stood up. His unshaven head, his torn t-shirt revealed hideous scars made with a dagger. Paul from above contemplated with the beam of his flashlight the glowing bodies floating in the waters of the predatory jaws with fins a few centimeters from him. Board were in full meal. Paul Martarak and his partner Pirito, who picked up an unknown weapon, uttered their raging tribal cry. An underwater breach from which a powerful hot gas escaped. Paul Martarak continued his maritime wake. Miles from the abandoned place, a volcanic detonation propelled a powerful toxic gas in altitudes. Nothing more to do with this population of natives. Paul Martarak at full speed moved away from the emerging magma, creating islands in a sonic power of vapors. Pirito spoke words of his sacrificial rites in a native language. Hours passed, keeping him away. Pirito parted alone. The sound of an overboard went in an unknown direction, reassured Paul, who will be strong fist in sign of victory. The him board will decelerate in a rising swell in front of a thick darkness enthroned in the middle of the ocean. Paul tapped a code on his handle, unlocking a security system. In a sound of automation, a hold opened, lit by a powerful green flashing light. Paul engulfed the him board there, which he moored to big silver chains. Wasting no time, Paul began to run, turning on a large black screen connected to a radar, giving his sailor's GPS a roving program on moving targets that could cause him mortal harm. The Black Isle. Unload the rapid. Bullet ordered the hand on his weapon in a dark place. In the insolent maneuvering of the ocean swell, the offshore felt a tremor coming from the seabed. Bullet began to yell, "Is there anyone in this shitty place?" while handing purple tickets stained with his daughter's blood. "Do not move any more, we send you an armed squad." The echoing voice was mirrored by Bullet's gun coming from a loudspeaker above. Bullet had an acid reflux in the mouth when his daughter Exosia left the offshore, having a rise in nausea. A sheaf of vomit was spit hatefully on the ground. Bullet was coming down from the nitro speed that had taken him to the dark island. His hardened face took on a yellowish hue. Holding his caliber in his hand, a tenacious fatigue made his legs twitch. The Holson brothers took Exosia's body to a highly secure perimeter. A freight elevator opened with a sound betraying all silence. A yellow flashing light pulsed at high speed. The sound of sophisticated mechanics made Bullet raise his head as he heard the sound of a helicopter landing on a platform. A team wearing surgical masks descended, surrounded by men in fatigues holding heavy submachine guns. The helicopter pilot turned off the roaring engine. The door swung open by itself. A Legionnaire's voice hatched as much as his face was commanded by Israeli barbed wire. Operating station. Well, Lieutenant, the men executed the orders, running towards the stretcher of Exosia, placing it in an elevator going down in the basements of the Black Island. At the automated opening of the lift, a man dressed in black with a face covered with thick strips of fluorescent red and green colors, wearing gloves, opened a control box where a series of geometric shapes appeared, illuminated in various colors. Seeing the stretcher arrived, his fingers typed in the codes. A sophisticated locking system emitted a series of his extinguishing numbers of safety lasers, allowing him to slide the heavy door. A wintry cold came out of it. The surgeons entered the stretcher in a first security lock. The door closed behind them. Antibacterial verification required. A powerful blast propelled an odorless gas, unlocking a second entrance, connecting all electronic machinery to Exosia. The door closed behind them, leaving a cryonuclear sigil on their backs. Surgeons equipped with suits neutralizing the low temperature degrees at the openings of the cryogenic chambers. One of them pressed a screen that lit up displaying, "Image reception in progress." Hazov's kilometers, a man with a taciturn face in front of screens ordered the operating instructions. An hour passed remaining in the meanders of his memories. Bullet nervously chewed a chewing gum, the contracted jaw shattering his teeth at the arrival of an envelope containing a heavy metal ball. A benevolent woman's hand rested on his shoulder whispering to him, "Don't say anything, this is the DNA code." The yellow flashing light placed above an opening red door gave way to a shadow advancing towards him holding a sheet of paper in his hands. Handing it to him, he read, "Vital stage stabilized on a chronogram." Bullet and his men, running out of nervous tension fuel for some of the drugs now awake, heard a soft voice in the middle of the night. Bullet woke from a torpor to see Exosha standing up with parts of her body worn with laser stitches. In the basements of the Black Island, the surgeons thanked the voice, having guided the operational protocols, having saved Exosha. The sound of an engine rumbled as the medical team boarded a helicopter taking off. Electronic sounds secured the corridors. Cryogenia, a sound of heavy footsteps smoking a cigarette dissipated in the underground. In the middle of crossing a thick morning mist, the offshore piloted by Bullet traced in distant oceans. On board slept peacefully Exosha under close supervision of Holson, with a hot coffee in her hands and her twin brother slumped on a seat sleeping soundly. A long telephone beep was received. Bullet confirmed his daughter's life restoration, noted a maritime landmark. In a few weeks closed the conversation. A paper lay on the offshore's control panel with a name written in black and white. Antika. Bullet keeping the course, sailing in the him board at high speed of the joy in the face to look at Exosha recovering from his mortuary nightmare. Eclipse was to pick up numbers of banknotes on the ground. Holson was asleep. Malwek looked at the horizons. A noise sounded in a distant echo. An abnormal whistle gave way to an explosion behind the board in the mists. A large military boat. On board, the officers around a radar in the militarily secure perimeter took a walkie-talkie while pressing a button on the alarm siren. Huck eyes in glasses. Hasumage saw only water spreading in the air. On the walkie-talkie the voice pronounced Lupe. The guns were oriented firing. An explosion 50 meters from Bullet maneuvering shook the him board. Exosha fell to the ground. Malwek broke the porthole. His bazooka propelled a homing missile. In the nothingness of the night the explosion of the military boats propelled blackish smoke in all the perimeter. Antika Part 1. In the power of the swell the Antika moved away, roaring engines tracing a non-straight line by the power of the sea winds due to the nuclear explosion. Paul Martarak had to maneuver, shaken from side to side, took in the hollows of the sea. Drops of sweat were streaming down his forehead, his eyes riveted in infrabiotic glasses. Information streamed from the outlet, magma signaling alerts. Passing a last rising wave the Antika crashed on more serene waters. Paul Martarak put the Antika on autopilot. Taken aback, he rushed to a room to accommodate magma outlet in a powerful electric magnet, fiberglass components, optical fibers, a titanium structure. A giant screen placing your fingers on a digital security code. The place was lit up with fluorescent green LEDs, taking care not to be sucked in by the electric windfall of the sounds coming from it. High-definition images appeared from the television news. Good evening, Lieutenant of the Navy. What do you think of the light energy having illuminated the coast going to be lost to the mountain? A satellite image showed the luminous impact spreading over more than 400 kilometers. Listen to me, this region is a real desert now. We are investigating the place to show that a meteorite has hit the ocean. In the background of the journalist and the lieutenant, a man testified in the torrential rain. Good evening, I am the mayor of this city. The explosion blew up a number of gas stations and building windows. The whole population is concerned the firefighters are unable to extinguish the flames if people were found burned to death. We are waiting for international aid for natural damage. Thank you. Closed the journalist reporting on the earthquakes of the beginning of the year. A beep sounded in the Antika. Paul Martirac passed not far from the manor. The electric power stung his hands. Paul put his finger down, which locked the room. Returning to the command post, he saw a kind of river mouth taking the direction his hearing perceived that magma outlet was connected. Paul Martirac took the heart of this artificial intelligence, hurrying to open 6 suitcases containing high-tech notebooks which he connected by fiber optics. Has magma outlet typing different program lines on each notebook in order to scramble transmissions. Magma outlet emitted disturbing sounds, sign of the breakage of each of the data that could prove the place where this artificial intelligence is located. Paul Martirac maneuvered the Antika, entering in reverse the length of the yacht in a warehouse. Nothing left a glimpse of his presence in this dark place. Leaving magma outlet to his noise disturbance, he locked all the entrances to the yacht with an eye security code. Titanium plates descended on the armored tinted glass walls. The sound of the automated alarm was connected to the celluloid telephone that Paul Martirac stuffed in his pocket. In a sprint he arrived at the back of the yacht by taking its basement, a Japanese brand car whose automated opening of a butterfly door made him enter and settle down. The dashboard lit up in red, yellow and green. The GPS connected to the Antika gave him the place of a loft to reach. Pressing power engine, the engine hummed. Paul backed up, the tires screeching at the drift leading him out of metaltek. Receiving numbers of computer information in his car screens, Paul Martirac had to make a detour with an important target to reach. 45 minutes later, Paul, seated at the wheel of his Japanese sports coupe, crushed his foot on the accelerator in a hurry to return home after what he had just revealed to an informant who had left his head damaged by his kicks. For some time now, Paul has noticed a little too much in his investigation of an empire terrifying the journalistic world. Living in an abandoned place like a fallen man, he could not do without his autonomic dependence. The only real occupation he is located an hour away from him in metaltek warehouse. Paul modified an artificial intelligence AI sufficient to govern a loophole that could arise at any time. Paul scrutinized his bloody hands holding the steering wheel, plunging it in the memory of his arrival at the gas station at night. A few hours earlier, Tommy Marcy punctuated. Tommy finished talking, he burped the hot dog dish. "Hey, can you hear Tommy?" Tommy hung up on a number of reproaches. "I'm just a loser," he repeated to himself. "Don't give a fuck." Juju, his dog, had just issued furious barking, hanging on a chain leash outside, a noise that of kicking received. Closing a discussion having ended on a bloody bullying. A man dressed in black wearing gloves with his hands beaten violently, one of his indicators, ending his action by transporting the body covered with bruises. He threw him into a garbage void deep enough for his body to rot in its nauseating odors. The man dressed in black wore a hockey mask perforated on all sides. Passing not far from an enraged black mutt sort of dog, he threw a black cat at him. Looking around, skirting the barracks of the gas station, the door leading straight to the mutt opened. Tommy stood with the nonchalance common to heavy alcoholics, blurry vision, a 12-gauge in his hands, and yelled drunkenly, "Shut up or you'll take a dynamite toy." His dog, a bloody cat in his jaws, growled. Tommy glanced left and right, not realizing that the Buick had been parked for half an hour and the customer who had asked for the bathroom keys had never returned. The dark shadow walked past the Buick as he opened the passenger side door, his hand on a timer connected to the energy conduction wires powering the engine of that rusty old 4x4. The man dressed in black, a mask on the face, started running, getting into his Japanese sports car hidden by high trees about 100 meters, starting lightly so as not to attract attention. The headlights turned off, the road highlighted by a thick full moon, the engine revved up in decibels. Tommy, seated behind the counter staring at the sizzling black and white TV, seized the remote control with an awkward gesture due to its proximity to the fridge containing beers he had drunk in quantity. Tommy straightened up, his vision staring at a whitish point of light intensified at the speed of light. The windows of the station imploded as it passed. The TV fell crashing on the ground in crumbs. A breath of heat made Tommy howl, hands on his face, seeing the abnormal questioning of his dog, the hairs of his scorching animal revealing a whitish skin. A tinted window car parked 100 meters away started in its direction. The windows of the car open on a man with a face filled with bandages of various colors. Only a cigarette was thrown on a barrel. The black vehicle without registration left accelerating. The explosion blew, deflagrating the service station in long flames. The car disappeared in the distance. The breath of fire, the sound of the detonation awoke in a bloody cough a person in a stinking empty garbage propelled 10 meters, resuming his breath 3 times. The man said to himself internally, "That motherfucker broke my ribs and punctured my lung." One of his hands gripped the hot metal of the garbage chute enough to get him out, seeing the burnt dead dog smelling a toxic smell of burning tires. Mazowie was walking on broken glass, looking right and left. He entered the service station by the window, shattered. Without noticing, he stepped on Tommy's hand on the ground, his eyes rolling back, who felt a pain immobilizing his attention in his hand holding the 12 gauge. Mazowie, drooling with blood, had a hand monopolizing the financial sources of the day, opened the fridge, took a pack of frozen beer coming out of another window. Mazowie boarded the windowless Buick. Under the effect of the blast of the explosion, even the rear tire had started to melt. Mazowie took the ignition key, inserted it in the hole, starting a reverse. He swore, laughing cruelly, "This time, son of motherfuckers, you're dead." Looking at his recorder, he inserted it in the USB box. The car radio had accredited that a man named Paul Martarak had become the ambient traitor in the world of terrorism reigning over the city, starting with the words of a whore to the Emir Sarami. A first detonation took place, exploding the passenger side. The perforated seats of 12-gauge lead raised Mazowie in hatred. Accelerating, he received a number 2 shot which pulverized his headrest. Mazowie was holding the steering wheel with his body down, feeling the fresh wind. His Buick rolled sideways for a distance of 20 meters. Far enough, Mazowie took a direction, that of the Emir Sarami, in order to entrust the irrefutable proof. The rocket Japanese sports coupe on the highway has more than 250 km per hour. The rev counter needle tapped the 8,000 rev zone, clicking as Paul Martarak engaged 6th gear. The music accompanying his drive was the final piece of tortoiseshell in the components. An all-electronic sound. Happy with the rhythm of the bass from the download of his latest album, he began to slow down in order to smoke an electronic cigarette with multiple flavors. Only the end flashed with different lead colors. Now at cruising speed, he took a road of land leading him home, crossing the fields that stretched for long distances. Paul heard an explosion continuing to roll. He arrived on a thick grayish smoke which obscured all visibility. Pressing on a control of ventilation in order to purge the air of the vehicle, he did not smell the toxic odor. Continuing to roll, he saw flames. In the extension of these headlights, a female shadow progressed while limping, located at about 20 meters. Waiting that she arrives on him, Paul got out of his car just before she collapsed in these arms, taken by a violent of an endless cough. Paul noticed that she was holding a sauer in her hand, a small weapon made for female sizes. He got the woman into his car, put the sauer in the glove compartment. Taking one last look at the plastic-smelling braziers, Paul covered his face, walked 3 steps, feeling his skin burned by the acid from the thick smoke. Paul crouched down, picking up a map, reading Rebecca. Paul covered his nose, having smelled the smell of rubber rising in his racing car. Paul accelerated on another path leading straight to the port, noting that Rebecca had traces of soot on the face, those clothes smelling of carbonite. Paul heard a second detonation rattling the tinted windows of the car. He pushed an acceleration, arriving in front of the port security barrier. Paul pressed the remote control. Walking along the port where oil tankers were parked, he took the road to his home in a disused area, numbers of cars charred with rust leaving the place unfrequented. The garage opened by itself, Paul having an infrared detector in the car. The long door closed behind him. Only the powerful engine sounded, the headlights illuminating a wall about 10 meters ahead. He turned the key off, the engine went out. Wasting no time seeing that the feminine presence was still in awe, Paul pulled her out from the vehicle, going up the stairs leading to the living room, depositing her on a black leather sofa. He looked at her. Touching her, he said to her, "Wake up, nothing is to be feared in this place." Paul held in his hands a card giving an identity. Head still full, toxic fumes from the blackish smoke. She began to cough strongly, touched her head, still feeling the powerful heat of the flames. Wearing redness on both sides, she rolled up her sleeve, thereby discovering a burn. Paul said to her, "Don't move too much, a heat emanates from your body." He then went near the jacuzzi. Opening a cupboard, he took a thick cream. Coming back, he noticed that she was in a sitting position, one of her hands touching her, blushing. Looking at the magazines on the black glass coffee table, he handed her the tube of cream. "Spread that on your arms and face, you've got red, chapped skin." She applied the ointment to her, soothing her body, refreshing those burns. While contemplating the vast room, her gaze was drawn to a thick pile of piled-up documents as well as piles of press reviews. Paul brought her a glass of water. Seeing that a new dizziness won her as she tried to get up, he caught her by the arm before she fell. She looked up and down the loft, a true concentrate of the wealth formula. Without knowing where she was really feeling safe all the same, she launched into a questioning. "What do you work in?" "I am a press review collector." On those she took a first magazine bearing the name Target, a veritable showcase of reputable weapons. Thinking of her Sauer bearing her fingerprints, which she thought she had left abandoned on the way, she had a rise of memories. The C4 had indeed blown up the factory. Looking at Paul, she threw the magazine at him on the table, asking him if he had glimpsed a small caliber weapon. At the time of answering him, a disturbing noise caught the attention of Paul, who threw himself on the switch, turning off the loft. He climbed a small staircase hidden behind a door, seeing through the tinted windows 3 men wearing Italian-type suits, as well as firearms. Further on, a big 4x4-like Hummer. Paul did not immediately understand what they were talking about. One of them quickly ran and watched the street. Paul heard the sound of his door downstairs, deducing that Rebecca had grabbed the keys left on the table. Paul, imprinted with the worst doubt, wondered if this famous Rebecca was not going to be riddled with bullets. Hiding, Paul dropped his eyes from the men alone. The sound of footsteps filled with hatred the head of Paul, who cast a quick glance. 2 detonations given from his garage made them fall inert. Below, Rebecca hid in the darkness, having climbed on a chair, having killed them with her Sauer through a skylight overlooking the street in a luminous, murderous gaze. A man of the Italian type started to yell while advancing with discreet step, aimed his weapon. The man screamed in hatred as his Uzi slammed into the skylight. Rebecca lost her balance, receiving numbers of glass shards. Rebecca leaned on her right hand with force, cut his palm. A trickle of blood escaped. Trying to get up, a beep sounded, triggering the explosion of an incendiary grenade. Only the invading heat of the flames made Rebecca crawl. Unable to get up, the Sauer in her left hand, a strident breath of fire passed over her head in a long series of piercing bullets. The rear windshield of Paul's vehicle imploded, shards of glass falling into Rebecca's hair. Scared, ready for the stairs leading upstairs. The sound of her high-heeled footsteps running through it in the deepest darkness slammed into the coffee table, causing her to fall to the ground with a sharp pain in her knees. The power of a shot echoed in the loft. Rebecca heard the sound of the Uzi pursuing her, stopping, prolonged by the inert fall of a punctured body. The sound of Paul's .44 Magnum had just sounded. The 4x4 pushed a violent acceleration, smashed the door, has automation of the garage in a violent breaking noise. Rebecca in pain no longer saw Paul as she lay on the ground with her eyes blurred. The driver of the 4x4 turned off the xenon headlights. A red laser landed on the windshield. An icy silence of a millisecond took place. The head at the wheel of the 4x4 exploded with the detonation of the .44 Magnum. Rebecca remained in one pose, the weapon pointed at the passenger door, which opened ajar. She fired 3 shots. A heavy body fell to the ground. Outside, the hasty footsteps of someone fleeing. "Shit!" she yelled, seeing that she was letting a hostile presence escape. The loft lights come on. She saw Paul down next to the 4x4 light up a cigarette with a Zippo, shutting off the Hummer's engine. Paul showed him the key dripping with blood. Paul ran to the safe room, stopping the recorder, listening to the sounds of the microphones placed around its perimeter. The sound of gunshots repeated itself, followed by a booming explosion in his headset. The police siren, perceived 2 blocks away, had imploded. Paul came out of the safe room with a Bluetooth headset around his neck. Looking at Rebecca, he told her, "Now you have to be sure of your point of aim. The target remains evasive in the port area. I have a perimeter to cover, and by far the most enigmatic, with limitless splendors in the tropical heat, signed by large numbers of archipelagos by a distinguished name hidden from all." Rebecca's lagoon green eyes were exhausted. The weapon still hot, she lay down on the sofa, wiping her traces of sweat, opening her cleavage, revealing her breasts. A violent sleep took hold of her. Sensing important things to prepare, Paul glanced at the ample chest with the nipples, hardening his sex, putting off the idea of consummating orgasmic pleasure until later. Wasting no time, he continued to fill the suitcases, ready to leave everything filling the trunk of the 4x4. Rebecca woke up. Not bothering to put her neckline back on, she came down the stairs, saying to Paul, "Let's take a look at the street." Exiting cautiously, weapons in hand, both looking in all directions if a curious evil had not set in Paul, Rebecca got into the 4x4. Paul took a rag, cleaning the grooves of blood left on the cracked, impacted windshield, starting the rolling reverse for a few meters. The windshield exploded under the impact of Paul's punch. "We will see more clearly. More sea air is good," said Rebecca, breasts in the air. Rebecca, hand on her weapon, ready to fire. The 4x4 left in the direction of a hangar unknown to all. Warehouse. Paul and Rebecca, knowing, they followed each other, running alongside the yacht. Paul put his hand on a titanium plate, illuminating with a fluorescent green the lines of destiny embedded in his hand, depressurizing an automatic door. Rebecca followed him into the entrance, hearing the door pressurize behind. In a safe airlock, Paul impatiently passed his gaze in front of a retinal print lens fixing him, which unlocked in an electronic sound, the control panel lighting up with various laser colors. "Activation CLE," said Paul. The powerful engines of the yacht started, shaking the metal tech building sheets. "Gunshots," echoed a yelling voice. "You won't prevail in shit's runaway paradises. Retract," pushes the throttle. Rebecca crawled up to the control console, accelerating powerfully as the din of the engine drowned out the sound of bullets, now 200 yards from the port. Rebecca, lying on the deck of the boat, saw Paul Martirac put on night scopes. Immersed in a greenish vision, he walked firmly towards Rebecca, who was holding the Sauer in her hand. In a fraction of a second he bent down, grabbing a greenish iron crate, which he opened under the firearms of bullets which rocketed, hitting the armor of the ship. Paul says to Rebecca, "Slows down engines." Rebecca made the request, turned, saw Paul standing looking at the port. His infrared sights detected 7 people and 2 German-type vehicles, 4x4s. The engines had to be on, leaving a dark green imprint in his eyes. Numbers of police vehicles were arriving, sirens screaming. Paul raised the rocket launcher in their direction. On the port, the henchman Sarami and his henchmen kept machine gunning police vehicles. Paul swore to himself to pulverize Sarami so that he would not divulge his identity. In Paul's glasses, multiple red dots located SARAME and his horde firing on all vehicles. Some imploded. Laser sights on, Written in red, the power of the recoil of the 6 missiles threw Paul violently backwards. The noise of the missiles blew the waters of the grayish trails from the engine of the rockets spread in the air. "Rebecca, accelerate," he yelled at her. Paul had a drop of sweat which beaded on his forehead. Due to the loft, the warehouse, his sports car. Everything is brought now to disappear. The missiles whistled, the detonations hit the warehouse, pulverizing and rising microdust in this gloomy sky. Zooming in, he no longer saw anyone, just thick blackish smoke rising in the air. Taking off his glasses, joined by Rebecca, who noticed the power of the explosion, he took out of his pocket a black remote control fitted with a small metal antenna. A button he pressed above the red light turned green. He pulverized the loft. A distant sound of broken glass was heard, followed by a flamesque rise. On its dial the miles scrolled. The noise of the engine filled the vision. Cleared in the middle of this starless night alone in the yacht Antika. Paul had activated the GPS, giving a direction kept secret for those who would seek to pursue them, as he headed in a completely different direction in the safest sea of all, perdition, maritime as well as terrestrial. An adventurous dream for them alone, knowing that now he was taking no risks. He pushed the throttle all the way. The yacht Antika headed into the waters deep in the distant oceans under a moon full of pale whiteness. Thus sailing alone in the world, a deep tranquility seized them in front of this immensity of water. Remained cold, the heart throbbing to the rhythms of its biological course, as indicated by a wristwatch linked to its cute child, of whom Paul particularly thought. Fresh memories invaded him. Seeing a birth again, his throat was a little tight, a ball of bitterness rose in him in the mouth, having in these eyes a deep attachment. A tear slipped on his wrinkled face, having the imprints of time, the cool head of his obstinacy to find his daughter. Paul accelerated curtly. On the porter vehicle escaped the black and cruel glance of Sarami fixed the horizon, seeing that he had by these remarks made flee his last indicatory credibility concerning the explosion of the companies of press and journalistic television, knowing that the press goes getting involved once again, taking him for the scapegoat of this enraged attack. He swore to blow up any home to the opposition of his dictator party. On the ship, the stacked papers, the magazines spoke only of him. Eyes turned towards the horizons, Paul looked at a console where diodes were on the red sign for him to be suspicious in this perimeter. He passed his hands above, pressed each switch, emitting clicks. The first diode turned green. The GPS was a bit scrambled, giving only one irreparable destination by the satellite. The second diode deviated these radio signals emitted. The third, the sound echo given by the submarines to locate the hull of the boats. The other 3 remained for a moment blocked. Paul looked at Rebecca, who was carrying a Gucci bag. He told her, take a look at the handbag. She emptied everything on the glass table surrounded by black leather benches. Taking out a telephone, Paul looked at her, fixing a diode. He immediately pressed it. The phone started beeping. Rebecca read, mission successful, signed Jack. Immediately she sprayed him on the wall of the boat. Knowing that he would eventually find her or she would go, she turned to Paul. I'll drop you in a safe place, follow me now. They entered a room where various machines were stored. Now he pulled out his card. Paul Martarak reached into his pocket, grabbing another name of IRKA Flesh. Your new papers will soon be ready. Stay discreet for the first few days. Never forget that your old past is dead. Nothing can bring you back to it. We are located in the middle of the ocean, keeping our sights on a discreet place in the world. The real destination. He threw a stack of photos spilling on the table. She looked at them carefully, finding it very pleasant. You will have a space of 400 square meters with a view similar to photo 42. She looked, looking for the number, fell on it. Turning the back of the card, she saw an extended azure overlooking a port where many boats were moored. Now enjoy yourself. You need to be in good shape. We will arrive shortly. I myself made sure of the place. No one will recognize you. A new start given kept in memory that I must only appear in death. Capital you have acquired it is apartment to follow up on an inheritance that of a spouse navigators who found themselves at sea one stormy evening without ever coming back to you. Tears flowed down the cheeks of Rebecca, taking sadness knowing that a new life was offered to her. Paul threw himself on a computer connected to a machine. Tapping lines of code he entered a site called ISI. I have to wait a while. I entered data to be able to credit what you will be concerned about. I quote restaurants, nightclubs. When you arrive I strongly advise you to take a maid. Of course the rules are clear. Do not mention me in any case. No photos, no phone calls. You will be dedicated to yourselves. It is not the first time. For your safety I give you a flesh Rebecca identity document. Created you a hobbit looking for a club. Integrate, but never forget this. He gave him a briefcase where various elements were placed. The Sauher, a card has his name and also a telephone bill. The services of the city are expensive. Take dance lessons would be a good idea to have fun and meet people in couples. And one more thing to keep the line, not to fall into laxity. Now she had tears in her eyes, got up which relaxed her legs and went to the bar. Rebecca opened the bar fridge. The temperature indicated 2 degrees. A red light escaped, putting in values, numbers to bottles. Putting her hand on one of them, pulling her hand frozen 55 degrees on a weight weighing in the 3 kilos. Opening the cork, an alcoholic smell that she went up in her brain by inhaling with force. She looked at Jack and said, I can't believe it, you come from the Amazon. Oh there, I stayed there on a day of lost friendships in the vast floral decor. You know cars start with that. It's a very good mix. I'm surprised you didn't drink it. Make me a cocktail. Rebecca bustled out a 30-centimeter long chopper whose blade shone bright. Numbers of lemons, adding sugar in quantities. She unscrewed a pendant, giving a boost of energy by the white powder being mixed there. Taking ice from a freezer, she placed a cube weighing 10 kilos, put her hand in her bag, taking out a brass knuckles, gave a number of impacts. The ice imploded, dispersed on the black carpet of the yacht. Paul, the hand imprisoning a remote control, pressed a button. The 8D sound started. A title track speaking of an imprint of humanity disappeared in the image of a name, FLOR, a cosmic mixture of strange rhythmic component mixed between them. Rebecca, sensitive to the hot winds blowing from the ocean, started the caipirinha out of place. Jack approached, seeing the large-sized 2.5-liter glass with a straw plunged into it, and made him drink large sips. You know, one day I crossed a desert walking on a quest. My thirst is comparable to this burning sand of soleus origin. Rebecca began to beat the rhythm in her hands. The sound had penetrated her brain. She began a dance with tropical movements. At each look of Paul Martirac, his felt under these eyes imposing on him to remove his top with the breasts in the air. I want to know what quest it is. Her Botox-swollen lips made her kiss Paul greedily. A stormy day, no horizon was looming except for a thick mist, a wind tyrannizing marine teams. I can still hear their voices in an unknown language. A powerful detonation made me shudder with a chilling fear of dying. I saw a large galleon-like boat of the blackness of an abyss in full wind. Its stern was only the mortuary representation given to all souls. Paul looked up at a sheet covering a painting. A look terrified Rebecca. I made this morbid representation. Do not look too much, otherwise a misfortune could reappear. Look, she said, at the disturbed details. For me it remains a legend present in my mind in the form of a ghost ship. The screams emanating from awful agony. Paul's skin rolled up. It is an immediate wake-up call if you see it in your dreams. The marvelous is its complete opposite. Well, for my part, I still can't see it. C.L.E. has developed. One thing surprises me, Paul. The temperature of this ship is constant. Let's say that biothermal sensors managed according to the epicenter of the heat emitted by our bodies. Rebecca took off her top. You can go take a bath in the air. Pulse hydromassage. Paul, the first find you distant, you leave me abandoned. Lose me in the darkness of your occult paintings. I will need some comfort. Paul took a packet full of sweets. Do you want some? Yes, I need to work on the curves of my mouth. Grabbing a pink candy dips in the alcohol, and effervescent effect made the liquid overflow out of the glass. I didn't know what kind of plot you were setting up. Rebecca, grabbing a fluorescent green straw, sucked. The flood entered her orgiastic journey. Paul grabbed her nipple, quivering with crescendos of pleasure. Audio music played. Paul observed her, waiting for her to continue masturbating her sex. Rebecca, with the greedy pupils, felt a greedy desire to finish her job of inflating her lips in a blowjob, putting her at ease with the emanating spirit, taking her to new ecstasies enjoyable. Paul only heard the cries in response to his multiple penetrations, holding Rebecca, moving her breasts, licking them with drool, kissing her. Their tongues mingled, exchanging the chemicals that each had absorbed. Rebecca woke up in moist water from her pleasure in a jacuzzi lit up with neon lights. Only her head dizzied. An alarm siren sounded. Suddenly Paul had just stopped the engines. A moment of silence prolonged a growing stress. Outside the ship, a powerful hymn board had just joined them. On board, a crew equipped with weapons pronounced in a megaphone, "Request assistance, injured individuals." Paul ran. Magma Owlflet robotic voice pronounced. Snapshots recorded in a slight movement of water. Stood upright. Bullet holding Exosha facing a moon giving image of Antika. Going up, Paul yelled at the back of the yacht. A hatch opened. 2 strokes of acceleration placed the hymn board in floating hold. Butterman's head exploded in a bony crack. His heavy body fell onto the board. His spasms in Bullet's eyes soothed him. Exosha spoke to Paul Martarak, noticing his stitches. "The merit of seeing you is life." Bullet came up the muzzle of his smoking Beretta. "Where's cute?" Paul Martarak showed him the pulsar bracelet on his handle. "His heart rate is normal, to think of it." Malik remained injured in the leg. Paul looked at him, swallowing a speed-up control ears, listening to a Jimbo Electro House mix. "Paul, follow me." Eclipse unloads me the beanbags. "The headless is noisy." Gula Eclipse, this scum who lies is thrown to the sharks. Bullet snapped his fingers. Holson climbed on the hymn board. At the grasp the weight of Butterman was impossible to move. A siren sounded in a metal detector attached to the handles of Paul. Having approached, "Shit," he exclaimed. Bullet, Gula, move me. The Eclipse and Holson stepped back. Paul rushed into the hymn board. The stridency of the sound emitted proved to him a scientific find. "Get him out of here. He's a droid." Bullet, Holson, Eclipse, Paul Martarak carried the heavy body into a room. The disassembly. Paul seized a laser object, started the cutting of the synthetic fibers forming the abdomen. A real technological treasure of the prisms of yellow colors proved its state of active function. A flashing fluorescent number. Paul Martarak will insert the number in the Magma Owlflet system. Security required. Creator name: Martera Enterprise Limited. Behind him, a searing acid sound made his head spin. A smoke escaped in a liquid, burning his eyes. Bullet in the corridor arrived in the room from where the toxic smell escaped. "Get out of here, Bullet." Paul followed him, closing the room with a security code. Exosha, where are Holson and Eclipse? "Follow me." Paul in the back kept wondering about the creator name. Arriving at the end of the corridor, a black staircase led him to the living room. Paul spoke to Exosha. "So you still have the sun tattooed?" "Yes. Thank you for your work." "Discovery at the bodily level. Why refuse? I trust you. Tomorrow I will explain the details of the biochemical operation to you. Need to be asleep? This experience can take off before your very eyes." Okay. Rebecca, sitting in the living room, put her baby doll back on her chest. Holson is on deck. Eclipse too. Paul walked out with Bullet. Exosha watched Rebecca cleaning a disassembled Desert Eagle on the coffee table. "It is a guarantee of the best. My name is Exosha." "Well, tell me, Exosha, maybe you have a desire to relax. Don't go take a soda in the FR5 Easer." Exosha in front of the freezer. Multiple colors were offered to her. The fluorescences illuminated his face. A yellow and green soda was uncapped. Drinking the taste of acids made her tremble. Bring me an Exosha will move towards Rebecca, who had pulled up the weapon and who aimed it while playing at turning her body from finger to finger. His left hand stopped the Desert Eagle. Loud voices of an argument coming from the deck of the boat drew his attention. The beep of Paul Martirac's phone made him pick up. From the other side a radiant voice was shouting at him. Paul, the first swear you're looking for. Governments have seized information on a Martirac. Keep burning all the components. Gunfire caused a bald man to raise his arms, dropping his flamethrower. Catch me, a woman screamed. Hell of flames will hide from me. The man ran through a wall of flame in the waters, dragging him down abyssal depths. Paul Martirac gritted his teeth. Only noises of military heels listening. Paul sweating, walking quickly. He entered where Magma Alphalet was disposed. An encryption system ensured his safety. A hateful voice spoke. Paul pressed a button in the warehouse. A long locking beep caused the GSM phone to implode. A female body fell to the ground under the gaze of a man shooting in oil-dark waters. An explosion killed them. The night passed in the self-guiding of the Antika, arriving at the beginning of the morning. Martirac injected intracellular components. With that Exosha you will find many greedy mouths. Exosha biochemical syringes in her chest. Heard you can get up. Bullet took note of the meeting point of a named Flesh. Urka Holson and Eclipse carried Malwek in the hymnboard. Exosha kissed Paul Martirac. One of these days, she said to him. Paul looked at her entering the hymnboard. In his pocket a bullet residue punctured in the night at Mawax. The hymnboard set off in half-light, moving away into the ocean dawn. Exosha on board, the T-shirt raised gently, contemplated her ample ogival chest. Alone facing the immense ocean, they continued to discuss things and others. Paul immediately took out a new cocktail for her as dawn began to appear. Diaresis, let's go to sleep. Rest in one of the bedrooms. I must stay awake. The other boats are beginning to be numerous, advancing at a steady pace. They passed not far from a huge freighter, sign that it was perhaps not far from its destination point. Wary all the same of the brigades of the seas, he circumvented a cove, stopping doing pleasure. He went to seek the binoculars, fixing the cargo, having emitted to him calls in the form of walruses, signaling a French coat of arms of maritime patrouille. Paul took the cape, saw land in sight and stopped resting. Also not far from an abandoned beach, it was Cassis, not far from where he wanted to drop her off. He slept for 2.5 hours, leaving as soon as he saw Rebecca standing out of its pulsed water shower. We are coming. Well, she dressed like a tourist, keeping these papers on her, taking her bag of values, these red shoes with high heels, put on a loose top with half transparent and a small red leather jacket. Rebecca, after this hug I want to leave you one of my portraits. He took out a black and white photo. You see, it's the time when I changed countries with adventurous tastes. Don't show it to anyone. The yacht parked along a breakwater. She descended magnificent. In the eyes of all she emanated an aura of something mysterious, forcing you to look away. Taxi, she called with her hand raised. Yes, she heard. An old French brand taxi arrived boarding. She gave him the address, not knowing what to expect. Urka waved a soft kiss. Turning, she saw the yacht disappear in the distance. Won by a touch of sorrow, all the same she arrived at an automated door watched by a guard. There, Madam has arrived. Reading the second floor, she moved forward, typed in the code, noticing a surveillance camera. The beep sounded, the door opened. She found herself in a hall. In front of her an elevator, on the sides of large stone stairs going around are on each side of Sporty Soul. Urka took the stairs, climbing the marble steps one by one. She arrived on huge corridors, having passed the first floor where there had only been a huge white wooden door with someone seated in a chair leafing through a newspaper. She finally arrived on her floor. Entering the dark corridors, the lights turned on by itself as she passed. Seeing a red carpet on the floor spread from door to door, she saw that the one at the bottom was her apartment. Typing a code, the door opened. A hell of a smell of confinement reigned inside, entering, closing behind her. Finding the switch, she saw two lights lit. Her going out on the terrace, she saw the Antika Paul making a sign to her, saying to her from those days, "My beautiful," two honks on the horn, taking her away in the waters. She had a whiff of sorrow seeing all this luxury around her, the view directly on the port and on the seaside. She began to visit each room. Before that, she pulled the blanket on the sofa and collapsed into it. She already felt in the mood to go out. An hour later she woke up. She had sat down on a chair on the terrace overlooking the ocean, starting a bottle of rum where it was inscribed year 1408, very tasteful. She glanced at the paintings representing pirate ships. Half of an old world map representing continents, the other part had remained in the yacht. She had noticed a clue on her next route. She said, "Ah, Paul, how long it carried high and far." In the middle of the ocean on a calm night, Paul, having burned his old identity and all administrative logistics, became Jack and asked himself the same question. Looking at his next goals, he looked at his pulse detector and his heart rate. Happy as anything, he headed for Bogota, saying to himself, "I'm coming, my child." Lying on the dusty pirate-era leather sofa, Urca stood up, tapping the nectar that had made her fall asleep, looking at the bottle Anno 1408, numbered Hold 1984, located on Porto Vecchio, not far at the time of modernizations that she lived. Scanning the vast horizon obscured by the bay window, his eyes fell on the port below, the only lighted place, highlighting the numbers of yachts, reminding him to walk there once the night was over. Going around the vast apartment, her gaze rested on antique furniture smelling of ebony. Size pots highlighted a vegetable luxuriance. Urca found one thing curious: the floor where she lived had a severity of interviews when she noticed the dull-colored waxed wooden floors, a black laminate. Searching for the switches, she approached the imposing bar carved into a tree, drawing its source of life from a flowing fountain of fresh water from an aquarium of water salines lighting up in turquoise colors. Discovering a showy underwater fauna distributor with digital automations, she put her hand on the glass. RASQUASSE passed at the speed of an arrow in large rocks where she found refuge. The water pulsing from the bottom did not let any accessory appear, only a light indicated in red the temperature of this ice water. Walking a few more steps, she discovered a painting representing a man with a dark look of certainty, a cigar stretched towards the wick of a cannon. The handmade details left an artistic perspective in the colorimetry of fiery emerald colors, going so far as to fill the barrel of a charcoal-enhancing flame from which an odor of sulfur escaped. Urca heard a long beep. Turning, she did not see the portrait, sporting a hateful face of cruelty, giving a cold impression. Walking in a line, she arrived at a window overlooking a cemetery. Gloomy trees line the paths of this pious place. Looking at her beeper, she read a phone number on it. Pissed off by the place, not knowing who it was, she would only dial it once in tourist places. The time of the message indicated 3:30 of the night. Emerging from his mortuary vision of the tombs, putting a high-quality sound distributed in the room by a sound amplification system. Urca was stunned by it. The place charmed her. The calm outside was commonplace. Looking at the Cartier clock placed on a large red marble table. No trace of dust. Searching in all drawers, she found a bunch of keys. Slipping it in her cleavage, her stomach began to cry famine. Opening a cupboard, she found female model dolls with silky hair, as well as a series of children's notebooks or drawings of abstract formats where a hand had written 3 years old. Putting the notebooks down, a sound coming from her hallway made her come forward as far as the door. Taking the Sauer out of his bag, peering through the bull's eye at a staggering tall shadow. The man wore an old man's cap, his gaze masked by thick glasses. He seemed to be searching in his pockets. Stepping back, Urca turned off the lights. A clicking sound opened the door in the darkness. "Murdia," said the man's voice. A penetrating cold air emanated from the room. The man began to run towards the open window overlooking. "Move, the stiffer you are, the ruin of the cemetery." The voice, unfit for good manners, engaged the striker. 2 empty shots took place. The man raised his arms in submission. "To whom do I have the honor?" said the man. A hand on his belt put his fingers on a long caliber whose hot end touched his lower abdomen. A burning pain made him clench his teeth, which emitted a crackle coming from his jaw, clearing the dental panorama out of his mouth. A brawl broke out. The man gently stretched his arm to the right. In the moonlight, Urka could see a silencer. In the street passed police cars, ambulances. The man took a step backwards, feeling the sour of Urka pressed hard on his back. A housewife's voice coming from the entrance said, "Mr. Pedrini again, it's getting embarrassing. I have to wash away the nasty vomit if I've been asleep since you left yesterday morning." Urka heard the light switch turning on the living room. Mr. Pedrini appeared in the eyes of the housewife. "It's not that important tonight," he insisted. "Do you want me to take time off, take advantage of the weekend?" The door closed abruptly. "Nothing is to be known here." Urka, head of violence, eyes saturated with anger, took the silencer. "Put it directly behind her back." "More than a chance," she exclaimed, taking out a phone. She dialed the number. A phone vibrated. "I picked up," said Pedrini opportunely. "What did he say?" It hung up abruptly. Urka knew who it was. "I don't know any word." "Forgiveness," uttered Urka. "Walk at normal pace towards the Cartier coffee table." The man, still with his back, took the steps. "I had to be discreet given your crap of Megas being out. It's ruined." Urka opened the door of the apartment, a bottle of whiskey in one hand, the Desert Eagle stuck at the waist. The silent man advanced. Urka says to him, "Since no one knows me in this place, take my hand." The stairs down. A taxi parked in the parking lot recognized the silencer, accompanied by a trendy light on the bar side with a bottle of whiskey. The taxi began to honk. The empty bottle rose in the air, going to burst into fragments of glass on the parking lot. The taxi opened the passenger side door. Seeing Urka, staggered. In the back, the silenciero checked his weapon. Recover traces of cold blood spread on the barrel, spread on his white shirt. The silenciero put on his brown leather jacket. "I drop you off where?" "Direction the trendy streets leading to the Palmeraie nightclub." Intoxicating. Urka eyed by the taxi driver. "There are looks that get lost there. Couples are broken. Opening the neckline." Urka says to him, "You want to see them ready?" My big Salo puts a hand on his fly. "Take a left." The silencer on the phone hearing signals from the taxi driver's EECB about a murder. "Hey Rapuil, you bring them to us alive." A police siren emitted by the taxi cut off all relaxation. "You can't do anything anymore," says the taxi driver. Accelerating in a bend 200 meters from the police vehicles blocked off the road. The silencer fired a perforating bullet into his headrest. Urka took the wheel, turning off the handbrake vehicle, which was skidding in a forest park lit by streetlights. The car slammed into a marble bench, shaking slightly at his sound. Urka heard the door of the silenciero open. Blurry vision, hearing police sirens approaching. Urka ran breathlessly under gunfire. The silencer disappeared behind him in a macabre deserted alley. At the sight of his weapon of violence, in a gesture he pushed a blonde crossing the window of a bar. The silencer entered. A taciturn man opened a door for him, leading to a narrow passage in the basement. The silencer progressed by crawling under the floors, hearing couples kissing, shouting matches. Seeing a cloud of dust, he arrived at a gaping hole in the ground. A rope led lower down. A team of speleologists was to work. Mike Henry turned to show her his electronic pulse hammer. "It's a big job." The team members, equipped with oxygen masks, having passed the wall, entered the vault of the central bank. Smoke bombs exploded, emptying the many drawers filled with cash. Urka fled from the barking of dogs, arriving in an underground car park. "Hey Trasher, you make me an entrance to the Discus." Blonde waddled in all her charms. She hugged his neck, seeing the car. At a distance of 30 meters he unlocked the alarm and the doors. Kissing his sweetheart of the hour, having a desire to kiss, they hurried on. The doors opened and they climbed in. From Tommaso at the turn of the key in the starter, a low sound of power made him move up a narrow tunnel to the exit. The robotic voice said insert card. The barrier opened, allowing him to put full throttle. I'm taking you for a ride not far from the beaches. You have a surprise to show me. The trip went quickly in the back of the car on the driver's side, Urka shaken by the road herd. We have arrived. The car parked along a beach, starting a Trasher. Fellatio ejaculated in the mouth. Don't try to understand, said Urka. Sorry, I'm jealous. A bullet fired in the neck of the sweetheart resounded in the detonation. Trasher turned his head, the hot barrel of the Desert Eagle on his forehead. A powder smell escaped from there from Tommaso at the opening of the door. Urka made Trasher advance, walking at his side, the weapon pointed on his right hip. Joining one of his latest acquisitions in a boat that took them away from the Monegasque coast. Urka received a call from the Silenciero informing him of the safety of Jack's apartment. What do you work in? The yacht piloted by Trasher being dictated the route to accomplish arrived not far from the residential port area. Stationary, Urka says to him using the voice of Exosha. One of the men removed his oxygen mask, being able to recognize Bullet, who spoke to a walkie-talkie. Holson remains in the parking lot and tells your clone to come up. Lower in the half-light of the lamppost, having tripped Eclipse arrived. Hey, I saw the hostage, Bullet, and in a hurry to see you. The machine gun in his back going up the steps. The door opened. Urka and Exosha greeted him. Glad to see you, Urka. Bullet, who checked his weapon, looked trashed. Hey guys, what are you going to do? The muffler of the silencer reached out in the direction of the Trasher's shoulder blade. Let me talk, implored Trasher with tears in his face. Exosha heard Mawak's footsteps approaching, carrying a chrome briefcase. Trasher asked, do you know how to convert this money? By spending it, replied Bullet. If you leave me alive, I know the digital currency conversion code that can make it a digital currency. Mawak's opened the briefcase. On a high-value marble table, a computer hooked up to a phone made a call to him. In the middle of the ocean, Paul Martarak picked up. Bullet nudged Trasher to talk. I'm informed, ended their conversation. IMS code 567231, 7,865,321 to 7. Trasher entered the lines of code on the notebook. The black logo appeared, flashing message. Insert financial payment amount. Trasher looked at Bullet, saying 2,500,000 will do. Once the sum has been registered, a payment code is entered. The IMS site validated the amount. The phone rang. Caisse de default. Microide agency deposit code 5,895,123 87,619. Now it is essential for us to go to a digital agency, explained Trasher. I myself am on my own in this professional branch. I am the trustee. You do not have to show yourself in the streets. Said Urka, I will accompany you to your famous startup. Trasher looked at the bags full of cash. Bullet stayed in the apartment to secure him, accompanied by Mawaks. The clone brothers lowered the bags in the trunk of 4. Holson at the wheel started. Urka in the back comforted Trasher in his fly. Had a good time. The vehicle arrived in an area monitored by numbers of cameras. Trasher took a badge out of his pocket. The security door opened on 4 quarters, entered a long parking lot, stopping at a building where company logos were specialized in many different fields. Trasher swiped a key card at the elevator, opening. A security guard with his hand holding a silver leash. Good evening, Trasher, said a female voice, from which I see the muzzled dog sniffled. Holson, a simple tear gas in the hands, pulverized the elevator. The furious dog, propelling with a violent kick, emitted squeak. Trasher was pushed into the elevator, seeing the security guard vomit a foul-smelling liquid. Holson, Eclipse's oxygen masks, tapped a button leading them to a floor in the night. Trasher coughed loudly. Eclipse's hand pushed him forward. Open your safe door, bitch. A bullet was fired at an Eclipse bolts with impatience in mind and entered the machine gun in hand. Trasher began to "You know someone who can accommodate us?" No one answered. Malwek Thinker was already reloading his and Jimmy at her side heard, "Wow, my bros are here." "Yes, beautiful," Jimmy with tears in his throwing it over the rocks joining the waters.